Today I will be demonstrating how to antique your piece with dark wax. For this project, I will have clear wax on hand as well as dark wax, and I will also be using two different size wax brushes, and I'll show you why. You also want to make sure that you have some lint-free wax cloths. This is really important. Now, for most of this piece, I have already painted it and I've done any distressing that I wanted, and I have clear waxed most of it, and I'll tell you why in just a minute. This one drawer I have not clear waxed yet because I'm going to demonstrate how to do that here really quickly for you. One of the reasons that I like to clear wax first is you will find that if you've done some distressing and that type of thing, that the clear wax actually makes your paint really pop. It doesn't change the color of your paint, but it makes it pop a little bit. So a lot of times you might find that clear wax does the trick. You'll notice anytime I wax, I don't dip my wax brush directly into my wax. That's because that can contaminate your wax, and it gets a lot more wax on your brush than you actually want. We want to keep the wax right here so that it ends up on our piece and not drying in our brush. So I just take a little wax wand here and I butter the end of my wax brush. And you'll find that this actually goes a long way. With the wax already on my brush, I'll be moving from one end of the piece to the other. Now notice here where I've done some distressing. Watch when I wax that, how that kind of starts to really pop. I'll just do a small section here before I move on too far so that you can see the difference between the wax portion and the knot. I've got my wax cloth on hand. As soon as I have wax on, I wax off. So wax on, wax off. Again, just buttering the end of it. And this is plenty to do this entire drawer. The other reason I love using a wax brush to apply my wax as opposed to a wax cloth to apply is the brush allows you to get in these corners that are really hard to get into if you're just applying with a wax cloth. Besides the fact that a wax cloth goes through a lot more wax than a wax brush does. So now it's time to wax off the excess. One of the beautiful things about BB Frosh wax is that it dries and cures in minutes. So this piece will be ready to go as soon as I'm done waxing it. Now that my drawer has been clear waxed, I'm going to be moving to the dark wax. I'm switching the size of my brush because I like to use a smaller brush to just start in these grooves as opposed to do the whole piece. So I'm going to butter the end of my brush like so. Not too much. I'm going to have my wax cloth handy, and I'm just going to start in the grooves by moving my brush with the dark wax on it. I'll just do that small section just so that you can see the difference. With my wax cloth, I'm going to remove the excess, and you can begin to see how this area that I have dark waxed is starting to pop and stand out against the area that's not dark waxed. So let me do a little bit more because I have something super cool to show you. Now typically I like to just start in the grooves and not dark wax this area, but I'm going to show you something kind of neat. The reason I don't dark wax the whole thing just to begin with is because dark wax is really meant in this case to age the piece, to make it look like it's been aged, and pieces tend to age more in the grooves and the nooks and crannies, and that's kind of where they gather their life experience, if you will. You can see the difference in the area that I have dark waxed and the area that has only been clear waxed. This is getting a lot more depth and dimension than this is. Now here's the magical part that I wanted to show you. Say you get to this point and you're like, oh, you know what, that's more dark wax than I wanted. I really want it to look more like this. You can take a clean lint-free wax cloth, just grab a little bit of your clear wax, like so, and watch this. If you rub it over the area that got dark waxed, look at that. It erases it. Can you tell the difference? So the reason that this works is because I clear waxed the piece first. Had I not clear waxed the piece first and dark waxed directly onto my paint, it would be stuck and you'd be stuck with it. But by clear waxing it first, that gives me a little bit more flexibility with how I want my piece to look. This is especially great if you're new to using dark wax, because dark wax is an acquired taste, and you really want to make sure that you like your hand at it. And if you end up being a little bit heavy-handed, this allows you the opportunity to adjust the way that your project looks. So I'm partway through the dark waxing and I wanted to just pop this drawer back into the nightstand so that you could see the contrast between the drawer that I have already dark waxed and the ones that were just distressed and not dark waxed. And you can tell that with this older piece with all these beautiful lines and grooves that the dark wax combined with the distressing really gives it an amazing antique look. I will just add a little bit of wax to the end of my brush, and again I start anywhere where there are grooves. I don't start in the middle of a wide area like on this side. I would start in the corners and move toward the center. So start in these grooves, and anytime you're doing waxing in grooves, it really helps to have a little bit smaller brush. Okay, before I reload my brush with any wax, I'm going to take my wax cloth and I'll remove the excess. And wow, that just really highlights the beautiful details of this piece, especially when you combine it with a little bit of distressing beforehand. You'll know when the excess wax is removed, just as a reminder, because your cloth will begin to glide smoothly, your waxed area will start to shine up, and it won't feel tacky anymore. So this wax is already dried and curing. Another fun tip is to add a little bit of dark wax to clear wax, just a little bit at a time, and mix it together. That will help tone your dark wax down just a hair, especially if you're new to dark waxing, so that it won't seem quite as intense. Here's a fun tip. I noticed I just got dark wax on my shirt. If that ever happens to you, take a little bit of BB Frosh brush conditioning soap and that'll get the wax right out. Now that the entire piece is waxed, it is sealed and protected and ready to put back together. We didn't just antique with the wax, we also sealed and protected it. So I'm going to put this back together and get some cute new knobs on it.